Okay, so you know how everyone wants to learn new stuff, but nobody wants to wade through like a ton of material to get to the good stuff?
Right.
Like who has the time for all that?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
what this deep dive is all about, right?
Yeah.
We're taking these
Huh.
complex topics and we're going to boil them down to like the really important bits.
Exactly.
So today, we're diving into,
There's some pretty heavy stuff out there.
yeah, it's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah.
It's Boris Ratnikov's From the Laws of the Universe to the Patterns of Life.
Yeah, that's a pretty big scope.
It is.
And I think for our listeners, it's important to understand kind of where Ratnikov's coming from.
Yep.
He's a retired general major from the Federal Protective Service of the Russian Federation.
Okay.
So that's, a pretty serious background.
Yeah, that's not messing around.
No.
Definitely not.
And, he's also written several books that kind of explore these connections between,
Yeah.
ideas that on the surface don't seem to be related, but he kind of, finds these connections.
Right.
And he's pulling from, like, his experience to, like, think about this stuff. Right.
Yeah, it's not just theory.
Right.
He's actually, lived through some things and seen some things, and it informs his perspective.
Right. So when he's talking about, like, universal principles and how those play out in our lives and in society, he's coming at it from, like, a real place.
Yeah, a place of experience, for sure.
So what we're going to do today is pull out what we think are, like, the key insights about personal development.
Okay.
About health and the forces that, like,
Shape the world around us.
shape our world. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the core ideas you'll find throughout his work is that, like, if you can grasp these, like, fundamental principles that are kind of working behind the scenes in the universe, that it actually gives you, like, a way to navigate the everyday challenges we all deal with.
That's a clearer lens.
Yeah, a clearer lens, a more positive lens.
Okay.
It's about seeing those patterns in life.
Okay. Let's get into it. Let's unpack it. Yeah. So first off, Ratnikov goes into like the importance of ethical principles.
And I think what's really fascinating here is this idea that, like, spiritual laws, ethical principles,
Right.
They're not just these kind of abstract ideas out there floating around.
Yeah.
He actually says that they're like the foundation
Yeah.
of both, like, individual well-being and a stable society.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So it's like more than personal?
Way more than personal.
Yeah.
He suggests that the world actually operates based on these ethical concepts.
So morality isn't just like everyone's got their own opinion type of thing.
Not in this view, no.
No.
It's not subjective in that way.
Got it.
He presents morality as the primary way to evaluate our actions and the progress of civilization itself.
Okay, so he's saying that if we don't follow these ethical guidelines...
But he really emphasizes the negative consequences.
Okay, what are some of those?
Well, you see, like, a rise in negative influences.
Yeah.
You see more social unrest and, like, a general weakening of the connections that hold society together.
Okay, so it's like almost like
Yeah.
if you think of society as like a machine, it's like things are starting to break down.
Yes, exactly. It's malfunctioning
Right.
because that core programming is off.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on to something else that he talks about, which is the power of ideas and information.
This is where it gets really, really interesting.
Okay.
He basically emphasizes that ideas are like the driving force of society.
That makes sense.
And he even points to Lenin's famous slogan, like, factories to the workers, land to the peasants,
Yeah.
as a powerful example of how one simple idea can change the world,
Okay.
dramatically change the world.
I mean, we've seen that throughout history, right?
Oh, for sure.
Like ideas are the sparks for like revolutions.
Totally.
Okay, so, but how do those ideas take root? Like, how do they actually influence us?
Well, he outlines a process where ideas are spread through media.
So like the news.
Yeah, the news, social media, entertainment. Yeah.
And he says these ideas work to create specific needs within us.
Okay.
And those needs then shape our behavior.
So we're not just like
No.
blank slates taking in information. It's actually like
It's forming us.
forming us. Yeah.
Shaping what we want.
Okay.
Sometimes without us even knowing it.
So he's saying that taking in information leads to the formation of beliefs.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then those beliefs guide our actions.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually those beliefs become so ingrained, they're just these subconscious patterns that we operate from.
Got it.
So it's a loop.
Yeah.
Information shapes belief. Belief shapes behavior.
Okay. So now he talks about this idea of Ialaja,
Right.
which is like,
It means wave sign package.
okay, a wave sign package.
Yeah.
So what is that all about?
So it's basically this concept of information as like a
Like a thing.
package.
Yeah.
A thought form that's wrapped in words.
Mm-hmm.
and that creates vibrations and mental images in us.
But the key thing here is resonance.
Okay.
So if this package aligns with like our soul's natural frequency,
Okay.
then it sparks our interest and it leads to like genuine understanding.
Okay.
It's kind of like tuning a radio, right?
Yeah.
You got to be on the right frequency to pick up the signal clearly.
Yeah, so some information just like hits different.
It hits different, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so then Ratnikov, he transitions into this concept of a spiritual revolution.
Right.
Which sounds pretty big.
It does, right?
Yeah.
But he essentially suggests that true personal growth, real like salvation, comes from the renewal of the soul.
Okay.
And he suggests that this happens through faith, love, and a genuine pursuit of truth.
Okay.
It's a very inward-looking process of change.
So it's not about like achieving stuff in the world.
Not really, no.
Okay.
It's about what's happening inside.
Okay.
The spiritual revolution he talks about emphasizes that we each have to create ourselves through an awareness of this like higher creative force in the universe.
Okay.
And it's not something that just passively happens.
Right.
It requires real conscious effort to become aware.
So how do we become aware of this higher power?
So he suggests that it happens gradually as we accumulate information.
Yeah.
And eventually, over time, a sufficient amount of information, especially information that really resonates with our soul, it transforms into personal convictions.
Okay, so it's like a process.
These are the process.
Of like learning, and then that leads to
genuine understanding.
Yeah.
Deeper understanding.
Okay, so obviously like personal growth isn't always easy.
Right.
And Ratnikov, he gets into some of the obstacles to that.
Yeah. There are always obstacles.
Yeah.
And one of the things he talks about is manipulation.
Okay.
And this is a little bit cynical, but I think it's interesting.
Okay.
He suggests that keeping people focused on just surviving, just their basic needs, basically keeps them at the level of what he calls a reasonable animal.
Okay.
And that makes them much easier to control.
Yeah, like if you can keep
people just thinking about their basic needs.
Yeah, just distracted by like survival and stuff.
Then they're not going to be looking beyond that.
Right, and they're not going to be like questioning things too much.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so what about the role of the media in all of this?
He is very critical of what he considers low quality media.
Okay.
He suggests that it actually actively suppresses spiritual and moral growth.
So like we're being
dumbed down,
yeah.
Yeah.
By like trashy TV or something.
Yeah, it's like bread and circuses, right?
Yeah.
Keep people entertained.
Keep distracted.
They're not going to be thinking about
deeper things.
The deeper things.
Okay, so he's also saying that like a lot of the problems that we have come from our own thoughts.
Yes, and he argues that these thoughts are based on beliefs that often don't reflect reality.
Right.
So these inaccurate beliefs limit our awareness and understanding.
It's like having like a bad map.
Exactly. It's an outdated map.
Yeah, and you're trying to get somewhere.
You're going to get lost.
You're going to get lost.
Yeah.
So what about this strategy of maintaining uncertainty?
This is interesting.
Okay.
He says that keeping people unsure, keeping them in doubt, actually weakens their resolve.
Okay.
It makes them
like indecisive.
Indecisive, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And it can even hinder people who have clear goals.
Right.
Because it creates this internal friction.
So then we get stuck.
We get stuck.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It paralyzes us.
Okay. What about role models?
He laments the lack of truly positive role models in society.
Yeah.
And what he sees as this like promotion of brie, which means basically an obsession with material possessions.
Okay. So it's like consumerism.
Exactly. Consumerism.
Okay.
So the focus becomes on getting things instead of developing your inner self.
So we kind of get lost in the material world.
Yes. We lose our souls, basically.
Got it.
In the pursuit of things.
Okay. So now let's move into some of the kind of like less conventional ideas that Ratnikov presents.
Right.
One of those is this idea of the laws of human development and karma.
Right.
So what's that all about?
Well, this section basically introduces the idea that each life has to follow certain rules in order to accumulate positive karma.
For future lives.
For future lives, exactly. It's like there are these universal guidelines.
Okay.
And at the core of these rules is this idea of avoiding what he calls parasitism.
Parasitism.
Yeah, basically not living at the expense of others.
Okay. So
it's an active responsibility.
Yeah, like we have to be aware of this.
You can't just like take. You have to give back.
Right.
Got it. And he also introduces this concept of cook,
Right.
which means the scales of life. Okay.
And it's like this balance between the positive and the negative things that we do.
Okay.
And he suggests that there's this point of no return
Oh, wow.
where if the negative side outweighs the positive too much, then you face some serious consequences, potentially even the end of your life.
Okay, so is this like a set destiny type of thing?
Well, he also talks about this inherent, like, vector of development that's within each person that kind of pushes us towards harmony.
So even though there's this
pull,
like karmic balance, there's also this
drive within us to
do better.
To do better, to find balance.
Right. Okay.
To be harmonious.
So if we violate these higher laws, are we automatically held responsible for that?
So he really stresses that responsibility requires knowledge and understanding.
So we have to be aware.
You got to be aware of these laws to be accountable.
Okay, so it's not just about what we do.
No,
it's also about
our words.
Our thoughts, even our negative intentions. And the consequences of those violations, they might not happen right away.
Oh.
They can be delayed.
Right.
They can build up over time.
Okay.
And they can show up in all different areas of our lives.
So it's like a ripple effect.
It is. It's like a ripple effect. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about energy balance and the consequences of that.
Right.
Which seems to be a really important part of Ratnikov's whole thing.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Yeah.
He suggests that those times in our lives when just bad stuff seems to happen, unexplained misfortunes.
Right, like you're having a bad week.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a bad month.
Or a bad year even.
Or a bad year.
He says that could be the universe's way of restoring balance.
Okay.
To an energy imbalance that we created.
Okay, so I might think it's just bad luck, but it's actually like a cosmic rebalancing.
It might be.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what he's suggesting.
Got it. And that also goes for like our interactions with other people. Yes, it does.
Okay.
He cautions against just helping people randomly.
Really?
Yeah, because he thinks it can mess with the natural energy flow between people.
So like I think I'm doing a good thing by helping someone.
Yeah.
But I could actually be...
You could be messing things up.
Messing things up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Energetically speaking.
And how would that be bad for me?
Well, if you're interfering with someone's natural process of learning and growing, you might actually be taking on some of that negative energy yourself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's a little scary.
It is a little bit scary.
Okay, so even something that seems good, like helping someone, could have like...
It could have unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so he also talks about like a warrior's victory being...
Right, even something like that.
Like energetically negative?
Yeah, because there's violence involved.
Okay.
There's a disruption of the natural order.
Okay, so everything's connected.
Everything is connected, yeah.
In
this web. Yes.
Like energetic web.
Yes.
Okay, so we've got rights and responsibilities.
They're intertwined, yeah.
Okay, and if we violate the universal laws...
Then there's going to be consequences.
Right, to restore balance.
Exactly.
Okay, so my energy state, like whether I'm generally positive or negative...
That plays a big role.
How so?
Well, he suggests that if you're in a consistently positive state, it kind of aligns you with these universal laws.
Okay.
And that potentially allows for a sort of higher correction if you do stray.
Oh, okay. So it's like I've got more of a safety net.
In a way, yeah.
Okay. But if I'm negative?
If you're in a destructive state, then the correction might be a little bit different.
Oh, like harsher?
It might be harsher, yeah.
Okay, and what about negative energy building up in me?
He says that can lead to all sorts of negative outcomes.
Okay.
Like illness, misfortune.
Like a punishment.
Yeah, it can be seen as a kind of punishment.
Okay. But if I have a good upbringing...
If you have moral upbringing,
right,
it can align you with these universal laws and prevent those negative consequences.
Okay, so basically like common sense.
Common sense.
It's kind of like the guide.
It's the ultimate judge.
Yeah. Okay, so he's got these rules of life.
Yes.
And he talks a lot about the importance of belief.
Yeah, this is huge for him.
Okay.
He says that knowledge only works if you really believe it.
Okay, so I can know something.
You can know it in your head.
Yeah.
But if you don't believe it in your heart,
it's not going to do anything.
It's not going to do anything.
Okay.
It's got to become a conviction.
Okay.
A deep personal conviction.
So to understand life's difficulties, we need to...
You need this deep knowledge.
Yeah.
This knowledge that's also a belief.
Okay. So there's also a lot of talk about personal responsibility.
Yes.
For our own situation.
Yes. Absolutely.
Like we're in charge of our own.
He really stresses that we are the creators of our own experiences.
And we need to like accept things as they are.
Exactly.
And he uses this Russian proverb to kind of illustrate that.
He does.
Which is
Ushu. Ushu, Marty.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Basically, don't blame the mirror if your face is crooked.
Okay, so
Don't blame your circumstances.
Yeah.
If you're the one who created them.
Right. Okay.
Take responsibility.
Got it.
For your own situation.
And obviously our ability to even perceive the world
is limited, yeah. Absolutely.
So how does he talk about that?
He suggests that our perception is limited by our level of consciousness.
Okay.
Our brains can only process information that they're ready for.
Yeah.
So if you encounter a concept or some knowledge that's beyond your current level,
right,
you're probably going to reject it or not understand it.
Right.
It's just not going to click.
So we need to like develop our consciousness in order to
understand more. Yeah.
Understand more.
Yeah.
Okay. So then he talks about minimizing negativity in our lives.
All right.
And aligning ourselves with universal patterns.
And he links that to folk wisdom.
Okay. So how does he do that?
Well, he draws this direct line between the universal laws that we've been talking about and the patterns that we see in life and the wisdom that's found in old proverbs and sayings. Oh. He sees these as like reflections of deep, timeless truth.
So it's not just like your grandma telling you.
No.
Like an old wives' tale.
It's deeper than that.
It's deeper than that.
Yeah, these are like hints at the fabric of reality.
Okay, so if we ignore these rules...
He thinks there are going to be negative consequences.
Okay.
It's like a natural selection process.
Okay.
He calls it atesham.
Okay.
And it results in loss.
Loss of what?
Loss of all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Opportunities, relationships, even our health.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's serious stuff.
Okay, so he also talks about the importance of cleaning our soul.
Yes, this is a big one.
Okay.
He sees negativity as a sign that we need to make some changes.
Okay, so if I'm feeling really negative...
Yeah, if you're constantly feeling down...
Yeah.
It's a signal to adjust your behavior.
Like maybe I'm on the wrong path.
Maybe you're on the wrong path, yeah.
Okay.
It's feedback from the universe.
Okay.
Telling you to course correct.
So this is like nature's feedback system.
It is a feedback system, yeah.
I got it.
It's like the check engine light coming on in your car.
Okay, so what we put out...
It comes back
to us.
Yeah. So we got to cultivate goodness and light.
Okay, so if I'm having like recurring misfortunes...
Yeah, if you keep running into the same problems, that's nature's way of saying, hey...
Like you're doing something wrong.
You're doing something wrong.
Okay.
You need to take a look at yourself.
And change something.
Yeah.
Okay, and our internal state.
Absolutely affects our external reality.
Okay.
He says that unresolved conflicts and stress can actually manifest as negative events.
So like if I'm really stressed out...
Yeah.
Internally...
It can show up.
It's going to show up in my life.
It's going to show up, yeah.
Wow.
In your relationships, in your work.
Got it.
In your health, even.
So we need inner peace.
We need inner balance, yeah.
Okay.
And he also points to this saying, which means...
God helps those who strive for order.
Okay, so we need to get our lives in order.
Yeah. Inner and outer order.
Okay, so now let's talk about what he calls the drain of dependencies.
Okay.
And like mass influence.
Right. So he talks about how things like fashion, material possessions, career anxieties, addictions, all these things can drain our life energy.
Our socks still on. Kumia.
Okay.
And that leads to stress. It can lead to depression.
Yeah.
It's like these attachments create energetic leaks.
Yeah.
That just sap our resources.
Okay, so it's not just that I like want to buy nice things. It's like, it's actually...
It's deeper than that.
It's draining me.
It's draining you.
Yeah.
It's taking your energy away from things that really matter.
Okay, and he mentioned something about suicide attempts.
He does.
In women.
He does.
With depression.
Yeah, he says that there's a concerning statistic about that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, and what about mass media?
So he talks about how mass media and technology can actually turn us into passive recipients of information.
Right.
And that suppresses our natural abilities.
Okay.
It's like we're not using our own resources.
So like if I'm just constantly scrolling.
Yeah, if you're constantly scrolling, consuming, but not creating, not engaging,
right,
then those abilities start to weaken.
So it's like
You're becoming dependent.
Dependent on
the input.
The input, yeah.
Yeah, on the feed.
Okay, and that leads to...
Well, he says it leads to atrophy.
Okay.
Just like a muscle that you don't use.
Right.
It gets weaker.
Got it.
And he uses the computer as an example.
Okay.
He says it's a great tool.
Right.
But if you rely on it too much,
right,
you can become mentally lazy and less resilient.
Okay, so then he gets into this idea of manipulation through our needs and like the loss of our natural functions.
So this is a pretty heavy point.
Okay.
He suggests that habits create dependencies.
Okay.
And those dependencies can be exploited.
So like someone can use my habits against me?
Yes. Basically, they can turn us into puppets.
Okay.
Who are just driven by their basic needs.
Okay.
And we forget about our spiritual and emotional needs.
Right.
So it's like a subtle form of control.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So what about our natural abilities?
Well, he believes that if we lose those or we don't develop them, it can lead to fear.
Okay.
And it can actually attract negative situations into our lives.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm like living in a really artificial environment.
Right. If you're not exposed to the natural world.
Right.
If you're not challenged.
Right.
He thinks that can make you afraid of natural things.
Okay.
And it can prevent you from developing that inner strength and resilience that comes from overcoming obstacles.
So he's saying that like too much comfort
can make you weak. Yeah. It's counterintuitive, but that's his argument.
Interesting. Okay. And then he goes on to talk about the consequences of a parasitic lifestyle.
Right.
And the law of attraction.
Yeah. So he suggests that living a life where you're always taking but never giving back can actually lead to a decline in your vitality.
Okay.
And even a reliance on stimulants.
So like I need caffeine.
Yeah, like caffeine or sugar or whatever.
Okay, to just keep going.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he sees that as a sign of degradation.
Okay, so like it tracks.
Like it tracks. Like that's the Warno.
Okay.
He calls it the life pattern.
Okay.
The Warno's be a Gorno, that sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty common idea, right?
It is a very common idea.
Okay.
And he uses a lot of folk proverbs to illustrate this point.
Okay.
You know about choosing your friends wisely.
Right.
Because the people you surround yourself with, they're going to influence your energy.
Okay, so now let's talk about something a little bit more positive.
Okay.
He goes into the idea of true happiness.
And respect for elders.
Right. So what is true happiness according to Ratnikov?
He says it's not about material wealth.
Okay.
It's not about external circumstances.
Okay.
It's about an inner state.
Okay.
Of
a butt.
Which means goodness.
Okay.
Goodness of the soul.
Okay, so it's like a state of being?
It is a state of being, yeah.
Okay,
but it's something you can buy.
Not something you can buy.
No, okay. It comes from self-sufficiency and freedom from envy.
Okay.
It's an inner quality.
Okay, and what about respect for elders?
So he highlights this particular pattern for younger generations.
Okay.
He says, liars alumno. Yourself. Which means... It means those who don't honor their parents and their elders will not walk in goodness.
Okay, so basically...
So disrespecting your elders leads to a worse life.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so then he talks about these negative